Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, je m'appelle Bernard Van Nuffel et c'est un grand plaisir pour moi de vous accueillir à ce séminaire public sur le lien entre l'eau et l'énergie au nom d'Aqua Publica Europea, l'association européenne des opérateurs publics de l'eau dont je suis le président. Le mois dernier, la Commission européenne a adopté sa proposition de révision de la directive sur les eaux urbaines résiduaires. Nous l'attendions depuis longtemps et nous n'avons pas été déçus. Dans sa proposition, la Commission européenne définit de nouvelles règles pour le traitement des eaux usées et élève le niveau d'ambition pour les opérateurs de l'eau pour qu'ils deviennent des acteurs majeurs de la transition énergétique. Il va sans dire, mesdames et messieurs, que cette directive aura un impact important sur le travail des opérateurs de l'eau à l'avenir et que nous suivrons son développement de près, comme nous l'avons fait pour la directive sur l'eau potable dernièrement. Aqua Publica Europea a déjà joué un rôle important dans le processus de consultation qui a conduit à cette proposition. Nous avons organisé 2 réunions entre notre conseil d'administration et la Commission européenne et nous avons participé à la consultation multipartite pour porter nos opinions et nos idées sur la base du travail concret de nos membres au quotidien. J'en profite d'ailleurs pour remercier chaleureusement la Commission européenne pour son approche participative lors de ce processus. Aujourd'hui, nous avons l'occasion de discuter de la proposition de révision de cette directive avec vous, les membres d'Aqua Publica Europea, mais aussi avec tous les autres participants qui suivent cette conférence, aussi bien ici dans cette salle qu'en ligne. Dans la deuxième partie du séminaire, nous nous concentrerons sur l'un des nouveaux objectifs proposés par la Commission. Il s'agit de la neutralité énergétique pour le secteur de l'eau usée à l'horizon 2040. Il s'agit d'un défi majeur que les opérateurs doivent relever pour protéger l'environnement, mais il s'agit aussi un objectif qui est particulièrement d'actualité alors même que nous traversons une crise énergétique historique. Les opérateurs de l'eau devront faire plus d'efforts et développer de nouvelles solutions pour soutenir la transition énergétique. Mais il nous faudra aussi, pour ce faire, un cadre institutionnel et réglementaire adéquat pour saisir tout le potentiel du lien entre l'eau et l'énergie. Ce sera le thème de nos discussions aujourd'hui avec des représentants de la Commission européenne, des opérateurs publics de l'eau, des régulateurs de l'eau et des entreprises locales d'énergie. Je vous souhaite d'ores et déjà des discussions productives et je suis ravi d'appeler à ce pupitre mon excellent collègue Armando Quazzo, le PDG de la SMAT, l'opérateur d'eau de Turin, qui modérera la première session. Armando, you have the floor.
Merci. Merci Bernard. Thank you to everybody. Today we are talking about the new directive, and I have to say that as the members of Aqua Publica Europea immediately found and immediately spotted that this was a Copernican revolution. I would ask my colleagues Joseph Hermal and Mr. Michael Sponar to join us at the table. Because I know that our other colleague Renata Tomuziak will follow us from Warsaw. So let's say that APE has promptly identified the need to activate immediately a working group which was to be dedicated to studying the new directive, and I can say that we have accomplished this task. But let's not waste other time, and let me pass the floor to Mr. Michael Sponar, who is the Deputy Head of Unit for Marine Environment and Clean Water Services at the European Union Commission Directorate General for the Environment. We will have the opportunity to have a direct and especially authoritative point of view on the directive that will keep us occupied for the next 10 years at least. Thank you, Mr. Sponar.
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Is it working? Yeah. Thank you. So my challenge is to present this directive in 20 minutes. And as the president was also mentioning, you know, this is a dense directive, you know, it has not been reviewed since 30 years. You were waiting a long time for it, and we were, you know, hoping to go a little bit faster, but at the same time, we wanted to really take time to analyze all the consequences of the potential measure that we would propose. So that takes time. And, you know, in the process, internal process also, we have really to make a clear analysis of the cost and benefits of all what we are going to propose. So in a summary, you know, or you may know that we made an evaluation of this directive first, and that's the first step really having launched this review, because we wanted really to see what has worked and not worked with the existing directive. In fact, you know, I can say that this directive is a model in the sense that it has delivered. It has concretely delivered. This is probably one piece of the legislation in the water sector that has delivered the most. And it's because of the directive of the European Union, but it's also because of your work as operator. I mean, we are only a modest part of the chain, but you are implementing this directive. So it's really your work also that has delivered a lot of things. And I mean, the quality of the water has improved in our rivers, in our seas. We have a lot of advantage from this directive in terms of investment. The water industry in the European Union is one of the best in the world, and it's also because we have standards at the European level. But the directive was a little bit old. So in summary, we are proud of this directive, and I am always recognizing the work of our fathers having made this directive, because it's quite simple. You know, there are not many articles. They are really well designed. They say what they need to say, no more. They fix deadline. They have included a good monitoring system, and we were able to monitor what happens at European level. And we were able to apply a kind of carrot and stick approach, because in fact, we were able to launch a lot of infringement procedure. And by the way, I was in a member state not so far from here, you know, before joining the Commission, and I was a victim of the stick, you know, because I was working in this field, you know, for one country really late in the implementation of the directive. So I know what I mean. And the carrot was obviously the structural funds. I mean, the regional funds were created when the directive was decided in 1991, and particularly to help Spain and Portugal at that time to build their infrastructure. You can imagine the path down since then, because obviously since then the regional funds are much higher. Okay, there are some rooms for improvement, obviously, after 30 years. I mean, the wastewater treatment plants today have standards which were designed 30 years ago. So we know that there is a possibility to improve the standards. There is still problem of eutrophication. Obviously, wastewater treatment plants are one of the responsible, but far from the only one. Energy use, sludge use is not really aligned with the new objective of the challenge, you know, societal challenge. We found also some you know, progress to be done in terms of governance, transparency, and also obviously the coherence with the other legislation. This is an old directive, and there was a lot of additional directive adopted after in the water sector. And so there was efforts to be done to make it coherent. You know very well, much better than me, the water sector, but this is a usual slide that I'm using to explain what is the sector, you know. Clearly, you know, there is a important public component that's clear. I mean, the public authorities are always in the middle of the game, because either they could have also, they are private operator also, but always working for a public authority in a way or another. The funding of the infrastructure, but also the operational costs, are covered mainly by water tariff in the European Union, 70%, and 30% through public budget, including European money. There are large differences between the member states. Again, you know that better than me. I mean, it's from 0 to 100% the coverage of water tariff. And then what was important for reflection for the review of the directive is that a lot of the pollution is concentrated in a relatively limited number of facilities. And this was really an element for us of reflection for the review of the directive. Just to illustrate what is the remaining pollution, I'm always thinking, okay, we have made all these efforts, you know, these common efforts, we have invested in our infrastructure, and then you have, you know, fantastic results in terms of wastewater treatment and collection. And then suddenly you have a big rain in one city, and then whoop, in 1 or 2 hours, you have a pollution corresponding to 1-2 months of the effort that we are doing in the wastewater treatment plants. So rainwater remains a problem and will become a problem of the future because of climate change. I mean, you know that the rains regime has changed and it's changing, and already today this is a challenge in several cities. You have also other sources of pollution which are not treated today in the wastewater treatment plant, namely the microplastics, the micropollutants, sorry. And then phosphorus nitrogen remains an important, I mean, it remains an important source of pollution coming from the wastewater, but I come back on that. The rest is coming from individual, so-called individual appropriate system, which are more or less under control, but not always, or rarely under control. I don't know what to say, but they are more complex to control and monitor than centralized facilities, but are still allowed in the directive. And then there are some member states which are not fully compliant with the directive, and where the existing directive remains a challenge. I would say for 5 or 6 countries, it remains difficult today. The full implementation is not yet there. And we are completely conscious that for this country, you know, changing the directive might be another challenge as well. Okay, this is a rapid illustration. Nitrogen, phosphorus on the left side. You can see all the sources, and you can see that wastewater treatment plant remains an important point source. And bad luck for you, operator. I mean, it's more easy for us to regulate wastewater treatment plant coming from point source than from agriculture. That's absolutely clear. So probably we have to take the part of our efforts here. And, you know, obviously, it's not to say that we are not doing efforts in the agriculture, but it's by far more complex to control and to put in place. On the right side is an illustration of the problem of the micropollutant coming from the pharmaceutical. I mean, it becomes really worried when you see the concentration of different types of pharmaceuticals in our rivers, but also in some space and in lakes in the European Union, but not only at worldwide level. This is an illustration of other things, you know, related to greenhouse gas. On the left side, we made an enormous effort to try to have a quantification of greenhouse gas emission from the wastewater treatment sector in this impact assessment. In brief, the impact assessment is a first step for us. Before having the authorization to make a review, we have to make this impact assessment. So calculating the different costs and benefits of the different options. This is really good in terms of governance, but then we are like little children. We have to present this impact assessment to a board of our peers, and they are independent, and they can say yes, no. If they like it, if they think that our analysis is good, they say yes, and then you can present your proposal. If the impact assessment is not complete or not enough detailed, I thought it was someone from the board, you know, from the impact assessment board. No, but so it's serious. I mean, and we pass once and we were blocked and we had to go back a second time and we succeed in the second time. All that is super transparent. You have all the remarks of the board in annex of the impact assessment. And you have also the answer that we provided for the impact assessment board. So we made an in-depth analysis of the greenhouse gas emission, just understanding that part of this emission can be avoided by the sector and through this directive, and another part is not, you know, the part with the infrastructure. It's difficult for the operator to manage that, you know. Probably they can do something about it, but probably, you know, it's more complex. The rest is an illustration of the fact that on energy side, and this is the theme of today, you know, but it's related to greenhouse gas as well. But energy, what we see and the information we have is that for the same level of treatment, for the same level of PE, number of PE in the wastewater treatment plant, you can have differences of energy use between 1 and 10. Part of it is explained by objective reason. Other part, we think that we can make progress there. Same for sludge. For the time being, around 60% is reused in agriculture with different type of problems, and 40% is simply lost. So this is not really conform to the circular economy, neither to the waste hierarchy, the use of sludge. Rapidly on governance, we work a lot with the OECD, and I will maybe shock you, but I don't think so. I think, again, for the same level of treatment, for the same level of number of PE, you can have operational costs which are very different from one wastewater treatment plant to another. And again, it can be explained, part of it, and another part, we think that there is room for progress. And then you have a list of things that we have considered in this review, including transparency, because as you know, this is nobody has the choice of his operator as a citizen, you know. So we, and I was deeply involved in the review of the Drinking Water Directive. So we thought that we could benefit from the progress under the Drinking Water Directive for this directive as well. The polluter pays principle, it's clear that it's partly applied. I mean, because the citizen, we are paying our water tariff. So clearly we are citizen, you know, are paying, you know, it's a good application of the polluter principle, but it's not a complete application. Health access and sanitation, I mean, that's the COVID crisis. I will come back a little bit on that later. This is a presentation of the main problems that we have identified in the impact assessment. You know, in the impact assessment, you start by identifying the problem you try to resolve. Then you fix objective. I will pass this one. Maybe I will come back on this one. Then you're sorry, I'm too rapid. Then you identified some objective and then moins vite. Okay. I'm sorry. I have 20 minutes, so and so many things to say. Well, we are fixing our objective in the impact assessment, and then we are, you know, considering different options. This is, I will be fast on that because we made an in-depth stakeholder consultation. We were serious about that. President, you were so kind to mention the contacts we had with Aqua Publica, and we were serious about it because what is in this proposal is not our proposal. It's a proposal of everybody. You know, we took inspiration with, you know, it's really the result of our consultation with the stakeholder. We were really honest and listening to everybody. You know, when we were drafting that, it's impossible that this proposal is coming from the Commission. It's coming from all of us, and the final result will be also the result of a negotiation between all of us, you know. This is just an illustration, but I will not go into the details on the fact that we have developed together with the Joint Research Center a big model for calculating the cost and the benefits of different options. The model is relatively simple. I mean, we have a database with 25,000, I think, wastewater treatment facilities. We have an ID on the load which is created in all countries and at European level. And so this load is going through, we have also some ideas about the rains regime and the pollution in the rains. And so we have simply very systematically calculated where the load is going through. And we have calculated what are the different emissions from the different wastewater treatment plant, EAS, or through rainwater, and then calculated the cost and the benefits of different measures that we could apply. It's very simple. I mean, we can imagine we apply a quaternary treatment for micropollutant to all 25,000 wastewater treatment plant. You have immediately the cost and the benefits of that, you know, with this model. So we can play with that, and we have played. Classically, we have started with a baseline scenario. We have to calculate what is the current situation and assuming a full implementation of the existing legislation. And then we have a maximum feasible scenario where you activate all the measures possible without taking into account the cost. And then we try to find an in-between solution which is acceptable at the cost level and providing the most important benefits. This is quite classical again. This is also illustrated here, but it's just to tell you that after all our brainstorming, we had a long list of options, and amongst this list of options, and after calculating the cost and the benefits of the option, we have also taken into account administrative burden, but also enforceability, and also their contribution to the Green Deal, and you know, overall what each option can deliver. But what was really important for us is the implementability, enforceability, and administrative burden also. So we made a balance between the cost, benefit, administrative burden. You put all that into a shaker and you have the preferred option, at least our preferred option. The main objective of this review are really straightforward, tackling the remaining pollution, aligning this directive to the objective of the Green Deal in terms of climate change and also energy and circularity, and improve the governance as much as we can. So on the actual measure, starting with a small agglomeration, we propose to decrease the threshold for this directive from 2,000 inhabitants to 1,000 inhabitants. Again, we have different scenarios, starting from 500 inhabitants to no change, and we have calculated the cost and benefits. We have also included a little obligation of connection where there is a collective system, which was something which was asked by several operators and member states. For the individual appropriate system, as I was mentioning, you know, we think that they should be better controlled. We should have European standards also, because there are national standards for this individual appropriate system, but we think that we need to move towards European standards. And we think that member states reporting more than 2% of the load to be treated by ES, we think that we need to monitor them. On rainwater, this is a very complex thing. So you can imagine that from Brussels, we don't know what is the situation, even in Brussels, you know. So, and the situation in Brussels is different from Antwerp, which is different from Athens, which is different from, you know, Copenhagen. So there, we were quite prudent. We think that there is an obligation to take some action, but there is no obligation of result as such. And the main action to be taken is based on the best practice in place in some countries. So to have first a clear monitoring of what happens, you know, with rainwater, and then on that basis to try to have a baseline, you know, analysis of the situation in each cities, and then develop an integrated management plan for combining quantities of water and quality of water. On that basis, we have also a list of proposed action to be considered by the cities, starting from green, you know, or trying to avoid that clean rainwater is going into the pipes, and then optimizing the existing installation, and then where need be, envisage additional infrastructure. I see our colleague from the European Social Committee present in the room. I had a question from her yesterday. Why is it an indicative target? And there is an indicative target of maximum load coming from rainwater. We were not able to come with a firm European target valid for all the cities, simply because we think that we need to take into account the local situation, and that imposing that would have been too costly at European level. On nutrients, we are doing three things. The first thing is to impose nitrogen phosphorus treatment for the big facilities above 100,000 inhabitants, simply because it's cost effective and because it's a source of important release of nitrogen phosphorus. So we think that it should be the case everywhere above 100. And between 10 and 100, we come back to the notion of sensitive area of today to be more clear of what means a sensitive area. And for instance, we have no more information coming from the Water Framework Directive and the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. It's clear that the Baltic Sea is subject to eutrophication, so all the rivers going to the Baltic Sea should be covered by this obligation, or the wastewater treatment plants. Same for the Black Sea, same for the Adriatic Sea in the north part, same for the North Sea. So we are listing that in the annex of the directive, so that it's clear that we are expecting that there is no discussion about these areas. And for the rest, we ask the member states to renew their list of sensitive area according to new criteria. So that's the main thing. And the last thing, which might be tough, I know, we propose also new standards for nitrogen and phosphorus. We have tried to really limit ourselves to what is feasible by an optimization of the existing facilities. But I must recognize that in some cases it's impossible to reach this objective without rebuilding part of the wastewater treatment plants, but we have tried to limit that as much as possible. Micropollutant, it's a little bit the same approach. Here we were not very original. We have used really the Swiss legislation as a basis because it's in place since 10 years. And so you have in the annex of the directive a list of pollutants that needs to be reduced by 80%. And by doing so, you are capturing a lot of other substances. So, and there is also the same logic of imposing that for the big facilities above 100,000 inhabitants, and then to have a risk-based approach between 10,000 and 100,000 inhabitants based on criteria that we hope are really clear in the directive. Energy, climate change, and circular economy. But for energy, we have this notion of energy neutrality at the sector, to be met at the sector for all facilities above 10,000 inhabitants. It means that the smaller facilities can obviously continue. I mean, it's difficult, we know, for the smaller facilities to reach this objective of neutrality. But at the same time, the biggest facility can certainly deliver and produce energy and be energy neutral. So all in all, we have a national target with the flexibility for all member states to reach this target by playing with the different facilities on its territory. And we hope that it will drive an optimization of the investment. But it's clear that you mentioned it already. I mean, we made our calculation before the crisis, you know, and now when I see the price of energy, I can redo the impact assessment. And it's even, I think if I have to do it now, we would decrease the level of 10,000 PE to something else, you know, but okay. And then an obligation of monitoring of greenhouse gas emission. We think that we need to do something. The first step is done through this directive. The next step is to go to neutrality, but to go to climate neutrality, to be honest, we were not able to propose that now because we don't have a serious cost-benefit analysis there. We are lacking of information. Circular economy, well, there are a lot of things to try to get the information at operator level of what happens in the network. So there is an obligation now to, from the competent authority to inform the operator about the permits which are given in the network, but also a dialogue that we install, you know, to try to limit pollution at source and to monitor it, you know, in the inlets of the wastewater treatment plant. Our hope is to push action to reduce the pollution at source when it's possible, you know, and when it's relevant. I mean, obviously, if you have organic pollution, it doesn't matter. I mean, but if it's pollution which is not treated in the wastewater treatment plant, it makes sense. By doing so, we hope to improve the quality of the sludge and also of maybe make more possible water reuse at the end. Rapidly on governance, we have something on transparency, which is very similar to the Drinking Water Directive, but improved by the ECD in the meantime. We have a monitoring reporting obligation. We have tried to improve the whole system because, you know, I'm always embarrassed when we publish a report from the Commission, you know, 3 years after collecting the information from, you know, monitoring data 2 years before. And so 5 years after, we publish a Commission report, which is completely disconnected from reality, you know, so that we will try to really have something more modern and something update, you know, online. We have some article on health, tracking COVID and AMR, but also imposing a cooperation between the wastewater operator and the health authorities, and then a few articles on access to sanitation, which are also similar to drinking water. Well, okay, we have calculated all the, we have identified this proposal, the best option. And then we have tried to calculate what are the emission reduction delivered by each measure, main measure. Then we have calculated the cost of each measure. Well, the cost-benefit analysis is favorable for all the measures we are proposing, with one exception, which is micropollutant, because we don't have enough information on benefits, monetized benefits in terms of micropollutant, but there we made a cost-effectiveness analysis. So based on the fact that how much micropollutant we can capture, how much toxic load we can reduce, compared to different scenario of cost. And also taking into account some sensitive areas and hotspots. Rapidly, you have a summary of the impact in terms of emission pollution. We have also an additional reduction of microplastics, which are well captured already today. It's mainly because rainwater would be improved. And with the action on energy neutrality and nitrogen management, we've calculated that the avoided greenhouse gas emission would be decreased by 46%, which is really good. But a first step by 2040. The total cost would amount to 4 billion, a little bit less than 4 billion a year by 2040, which is lower than the benefits, the monetized benefits. I am always prudent when I am manipulating that because the costs are clear. Someone has to pay, and that's obvious. You know, the benefits are benefits for society, and which are a little bit more theoretical. But we have the theoretical, you know, economy to do that, so we did. And so, I mean, it's there, and we were able to demonstrate that the benefits for the society are higher. Clearly, as I was telling you today, 70% is covered by water tariff and 30% by public budget. We propose for the micropollutant to have a system of producer responsibility. All in all, what we see is that 90% of the toxicity in the wastewater are coming from two sectors, pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. And so we were thinking, okay, why don't we apply better the polluter pays principle and simply send the invoice back to this sector, like it is done already in solid waste management. You know, this is not extremely original. It's probably the first time that we do it for the water sector, but you know, your colleague working in waste sector, they are used to do that, you know, for several waste streams. We calculate what are the impacts. So if we use the producer responsibility, you can see that it would be 1 billion per year by 2040 taken from the sector and sent back to cover the quaternary treatment, which is needed for micropollutant. We made even calculation of, because obviously industry will pay, but they have the choice. Either they pass the cost to the consumer or they take it on their margin profit. In the waste sector, they always made a mix of that. So we made a calculation of the two extreme case. If they take it on the margin profits, it's relatively modest. It would be a reduction of 0.5 to 0.9%. Wow, you know, you can compare that to the increase of the margin profit this last year of the sector, and I think we are on safe grounds. If they pass the whole cost on the consumer, it would be a maximum increase of €3 per person per year, which is okay. It's another increase on top of other increase, huh? So we have to be prudent with that, but we calculate that and we made it very transparent. You know, it's a political choice. All in all, the Commission could have decided to not have this system of producer responsibility, and then classical way we would have come back to water tariff or public budget. So, but we took the choice to make this proposal with the EPR system. Public budget, it would represent 0.1 billion per year. It's to compare to today, 2 billion per year are given by the Commission by the European Union for water infrastructure, you know, in all member states. And then water tariff would be increased on average by 2.3% with differences between the member states. And then again, we made an effort again with our colleagues of OECD to go to these member states having a lot of water tariff covered, you know, covering a lot of water tariff to compare, you know, to affordability of the low income. And our conclusion was that for these countries, you know, the affordability is not in danger, even if we have to think about social measure. That's absolutely clear. This is, because I think I'm already a little bit late. So this is a summary of how the EPR system would work in practice. You know, maybe for you, wastewater operator on the back, you know, downstairs, you know, you will have contract with the producer organization representing the pharmaceutical and cosmetic industry and implementing their obligation for their members here. And so meaning that like in the solid waste sector, you will have contract, you know, with this producer responsibility organization to put in place your quaternary treatment and to make sure that the costs are covered. The costs are the cost for collecting information, monitoring, and also obviously the required infrastructure. This is again very classical. We have not invented anything, I can tell you. This is simply a cut and paste of what happens in the waste sector. The cost and benefits analysis is positive for all member states, but okay, I mean, with all the prudence that I have put, I think the most important is to see what are the costs per member states, you know, because these costs are real. And then we have also identified, I'm nearly there, the uncertainties related to this proposal. There are uncertainties with the model. There are uncertainties, mainly I think the most important uncertainties are related to the starting position of the member states. You know, as I was mentioning, we were ambitious to try to cover rainwaters, to cover individual appropriate treatment, etc. But it's difficult for us to understand what is the actual situation in each country. So what we did before starting the model, we made a fiche per country with all the information that we thought are relevant for the country. And we have submitted that to each member state so that they can see, okay, we think that 20% is EAS in your country. And we think that amongst these 20%, around half of your EAS are respecting the standards and the other are outside control, you know. So we submit that to the member states. It's clear that if the starting position of the member states is better than what we have in the model, but tant mieux, they will have to invest less. If it's worse, they will have to invest more, but they will have more benefits at the same time. So voila, the answer is there. You know, I mean, it's not brilliant, but it's like that. Then also I wanted to thank the Joint Research Center, the OECD, the EA. We were working a lot with them. This is just the 11 publications made in the context of this review by the GRC. There are a lot of papers which are interesting on rainwater, on microplastics, on micropollutants. They really made a lot of things. And it was submitted to their peers into publications, and most of them are now already published. So there is behind that a lot of information which was really serious, and that explains also why it took a little bit time. Voila, now the proposal will go to the Parliament and the Council, and we will have 1 or 2 years of interesting time. I don't know whether we are starting with the Pachiasso and we will land with the Gioconda or the reverse, but I can tell you that both are, good. And I think that now our duty is to explain our choices, in full transparency, and to explain why we propose that. But our duty is to listen now and to really adapt the text so that it is acceptable for everybody. I think that if it's acceptable for everybody, we increase our chance of implementing it in practice. And that's why this type of meeting is important. And I would like to thank you again for your invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sponer, and thank you for your availability to listen, because it's something that we really need. I would say that from the analysis and the consideration that the working group on the new wastewater treatment directive has condensed, emerged some clear consideration that we would like to share with you. Presentation, there's just a few slides. Anyway, first of all, the proposal is truly ambitious, and at the same time it set some necessary objectives to be achieved at a different level of environmental protection. So this is the goal that we feel that it was in your idea. One point that we really have appreciated is the inclusion of financing the mechanism other than the tariff. So at the same time, the correlation between this mechanism and the polluter pays principle, and this interesting hypothesis of the extended producer responsibility scheme, with which the medicine and cosmetic producers, but also textile, should bear the additional cost, linked to the introduction of the quaternary purification system. It's a real outbreak from our point of view. I think that I try to interpret the common sentiment if I say that as public water service companies, we are ready to be an active part of this plan, as long as the principle of correct redistribution of costs generated by the need to activate of more performing treatment is always maintained. We are absolutely aware of the fact that the directive involves truly significant investment and operating costs, and the current contingency, which sees an explosion of costs from energy, from raw materials, it will be really essential that some flexibility mechanism is introduced. Here in the snapshot, we have reported the 4 main points of attention, which namely are stormwater management, the advanced quaternary treatments, the energy neutrality, and the new limits of nutrients. On the left-hand side of the slide, we have shown the advantages in green, in red, what we as operators, as a working group on wastewater treatment directive, feel that and perceive that are critical issues. And on the right of the slide, some consideration that we have collected from our members. To save time, I won't go over all the individual points, but I will highlight what I already anticipated. First, we are not in a greenfield, unfortunately, because we have to deal with reality. we must be able to pursue the challenging objective that the directive sets for us, but compatibly with the balance of our management and the necessary timescale for adaptation. Specifically, the investments in stormwater overflows, the 1%, which is directly connected to the area of urban planning, in which we, as a water service operator, have often play a marginal role. We all agree about the correctness of integrating the urban fabric, the urban tissue of the plan for management of rainwater with wastewater treatment, because we know that we are doing this work, we are doing this job. But in any case, sometimes we have the fear that the adoption of rapid measures can involve exorbitant costs, and probably much more impact from the environmental point of view than medium or long-term planning. Perhaps in this case, it would be preferable to link the implementation of solutions to the achievement of objective of the framework directive. The focal point, the pivotal point, is represented by the fact that our reality is very heterogeneous. In Europe, we have an heterogeneity of context. We have, as you said before, the directive, the new directive, the old directive and the new directive are clear, are simple and clear, and it's a great point. But on the other side, we have to say that simplicity translates into applicability, but the diversity of the European context is also richness. And we must find the right recognition also for this point. The principle of energy efficiency must pass from the enunciation to the practical application. When you speak about the transition to a quaternary treatment, the energy neutrality is feasible today, but unfortunately with technologies that probably are not ready yet, or maybe too expensive for our standards. Therefore, we feel that it's necessary to model the translation towards the more performing system according to the objective that the directive sets. But we stress the point that we have to foresee mechanism of approach and convergence that dictates the priorities of the intervention according to the environmental needs and the heterogeneity of the situation. I bring the example of my company that sets the service for the area of northwest of Italy, Turin, and some 300 city councils. Well, in that case, we have everything but the sea, from the mountain to the flat, to the hill, to the. So it's a context that goes from the smallest European city council to the large 1 million inhabitant city. And these contexts are very different and very heterogeneous. But I would say that to better appreciate the richness of our European heterogeneity, we are pleased to be helped in this exchange of views by the representative of two major European operators, and I will call my friend Joseph Fermal, who is the general director of the Syndicat de l'eau de assainissement de la Alsace-Moselle, that manages the service for 3 departments and for 737 municipalities. Joseph.
Oui, donc moi, Joseph Fermal, directeur général du S2A. Donc il y a des visuels qui vont passer. Le tout premier, je ne sais pas si on peut le passer, parce que j'ai pas la main là, sur le truc. Non, puisqu'Armando vient de nous parler des différents contextes que nous pouvons rencontrer. Attends, il y a un petit souci technique là, je sais pas. On peut juste revenir en arrière. Voilà. Oui, donc notre contexte, alors il est à la fois comparable et peut-être pas tout à fait non plus avec le vôtre, Armando, mais effectivement, le S2A intervient sur une partie de l'Est de la France, sur 737 communes, hein, aussi bien des communes rurales que des communes très urbaines, puisque Nous avons effectivement un périmètre extrêmement étendu de collectivités et on intervient aussi bien sur l'assainissement, qui est le sujet du jour, que sur une vision intégrée de la gestion du cycle de l'eau, puisque nous travaillons aussi bien sur la production et distribution d'eau potable que sur la gestion des cours d'eau. Et pour ce qui est des stations d'épuration, 120 stations d'épuration pour une capacité supérieure à 1 million d'équivalents habitants. Et donc, avec aussi une forte démarche de responsabilité sociétale et d'économie circulaire. Alors, parmi les points que nous avons pu identifier à la fois dans le cadre des travaux auxquels Franck Perru, ici présent, a pu participer à vos côtés, Armando, et puis aux côtés de tous les autres collègues, et de notre retour d'expérience interne, il nous semble qu'il y a des points d'évolution du droit qui sont très positifs. Alors bien sûr, évidemment, les objectifs, ça on y souscrit de toute évidence, mais également un certain nombre de clarifications que vous avez évoquées tout à l'heure, M. Spodard, sur la question de le niveau d'agglomération pertinent, la question aussi d'aller vers un niveau d'exigence élevé sur la question de l'assainissement autonome, puisque j'ai bien compris qu'au niveau européen, on avait des pratiques qui étaient extrêmement diverses. Donc, effectivement, nous, on est très favorable à ce que finalement, on puisse emmener l'ensemble des habitants dans la diversité de leur situation, dans ces objectifs. Un deuxième point qui nous paraît vraiment très positif, et on s'étonne même qu'il n'ait pas été mis en vigueur jusqu'à présent, et on espère que la commission sera suivie aussi, y compris parce qu'on peut imaginer aussi que dans des négociations, il puisse y avoir un certain nombre de lobbies qui puissent s'exprimer sur la mise en œuvre du principe pollueur-payeur sur les micropolluants. Et nous, on vous invite même à aller encore plus loin, si c'est possible, sur des sujets comme par exemple les pesticides, les phytosanitaires, voire les produits ou les résidus de l'industrie automobile, parce qu'on pense qu'effectivement, on doit avoir une ambition forte en tant que traiteur d'eau, mais il faut aussi que l'ambition puisse s'accompagner de mesures le plus en amont possible pour nous éviter un certain nombre de difficultés et au final d'ailleurs aussi sur la chaîne de traitement des boues. À ce titre-là, une autre dimension qui nous paraît intéressante, alors qui est déjà applicable dans certains pays, dont par exemple la France, c'est la question de l'autorisation des rejets non domestiques, puisque une des particularités, nous le savons tous ici, c'est que nous devons délivrer un produit fini de très grande qualité, mais avec une matière première, si je puis dire, qui est de qualité et de quantité très variable. Donc, on pense qu'il faut vraiment mettre le paquet sur la question de la maîtrise des rejets. Alors évidemment, dans le cadre d'un bon compromis entre l'objectif environnemental et l'objectif économique, mais pourquoi pas aller aussi sur des dispositions intermédiaires pour les petites entreprises, parce que le tissu des artisans, des PME, pour nous, doit également être pris en compte dans la question de la maîtrise des rejets. Et d'ailleurs, ça fait partie après aussi, non seulement de la capacité qu'on aura à pouvoir traiter les micropolluants et puis l'ensemble des paramètres à un niveau d'efficacité élevé, mais ça rentre aussi dans le principe de confiance, notamment pour l'élimination des boues de stations d'épuration, où régulièrement on peut avoir des difficultés avec des acteurs notamment agricoles qui s'interrogent sur la qualité et la maîtrise qu'on peut avoir sur notamment les rejets artisanaux qui sont non domestiques et qui peuvent donc avoir des qualités problématiques. Et puis on se réjouit aussi que vous mettiez à niveau le niveau d'exigence en matière de qualité de service rendu et de redevabilité du service rendu, puisque c'est une exigence démocratique importante entre l'assainissement et l'eau potable, et pourquoi pas un jour aussi sur la gestion des cours d'eau, puisque c'est un sujet qui nous paraît aujourd'hui être important, avoir une vision intégrée du cycle de l'eau. Pour autant, je pense que c'est pour ça qu'on est là aujourd'hui aussi, il nous paraît nécessaire d'attirer votre attention, avec tout le respect que nous devons pour tout le travail que vous avez déjà fait, puisque bon, j'ai bien compris que vous aviez souhaité intégrer l'ensemble des parties prenantes sur un certain nombre de points. Alors, ça peut être parfois des points techniques, ça peut être des points de méthode, ça peut être aussi des points financiers. Alors, il s'agit peut-être parfois de précision, mais on sait que le droit, il mérite d'être le plus précis possible. Alors, un premier exemple, c'est la question de la période de référence en matière de temps sec. Est-ce qu'on est bien d'accord sur le fait qu'on prend bien en compte au numérateur le flux des déversements et au dénominateur le flux total de l'agglomération par temps sec? Est-ce que c'est une réponse positive? Bon, ça nous rassure. Donc, si ça peut être précisé dans les textes, ça serait bien parce que c'est important pour nous. Parfois, on a pu se rendre compte de différences d'appréciation que vous pouvez avoir entre les États sur un sujet comme ça. Un autre point de vigilance, et là je rebondis un peu sur ce qu'a dit aussi Armando, la question des objectifs azote et phosphore. Nous, il nous semble qu'il faut fixer des objectifs en rendement ou en concentration, et pas en rendement et en concentration. Alors, il y a peut-être des cas, et ça pourrait peut-être être laissé à l'appréciation des États sur les zones particulièrement sensibles, qu'on puisse effectivement avoir une exigence en rendement et en concentration. Mais par exemple, quand vous avez des effluents qui sont relativement dilués, quand vous arrivez déjà à un niveau de concentration relativement faible, le rendement, s'il est exigé à un niveau très élevé, il va nous amener à développer des technologies très coûteuses pour un gain environnemental relativement limité. Et n'oublions pas non plus que chaque fois qu'on a une exigence de performance, on a aussi une contrepartie en termes de consommation d'énergie et en termes aussi de production de boue. Et un autre point aussi concernant les dimensions de vigilance, et là je rebondis aussi sur le propos d'Armando, ça concerne au niveau notamment de la gestion du temps de pluie. En termes de calendrier, si on peut avoir un peu plus de temps, ça va nous permettre aussi de privilégier les solutions basées sur la nature qui ont plein d'autres avantages, notamment par rapport à la question du changement climatique, plutôt que des solutions béton. Voilà donc quelques points de vigilance. Enfin, je ne suis pas exhaustif puisque j'ai aussi des contraintes de temps, mais quelques points de vigilance qu'on voulait partager avec vous. Et je prolonge naturellement par la question financière. Alors, le traitement quaternaire, on y souscrit évidemment, ça dans le sens d'histoire. Et puis en plus, on a des voisins suisses qui le pratiquent déjà. Et vous l'avez rappelé tout à l'heure, hein, ce sponsor. Par contre, il faudrait s'assurer que l'objectif de traitement, il s'accompagne bien de l'obligation de responsabilité du producteur. C'est-à-dire qu'il ne faudrait pas qu'au hasard des différentes négociations et discussions, on ne garde que l'objectif et pas le moyen qui va être quand même privilégié pour ce faire. Vous voyez que ça peut être un point quand même sensible, hein, vous l'imaginez bien. Et plus généralement, on ne doute pas, vu l'état d'esprit qui est le vôtre, du soutien financier européen que vous voudrez bien mobiliser sur notamment la question de la politique de production d'énergie renouvelable. Bon, nous, on a fait un petit calcul. Hein. Sur une station de 30 000 équivalents habitants, il faut à peu près 1 hectare de panneaux photovoltaïques. Et ça va coûter environ 1,5 million d'euros. Alors, vous avez raison de dire que les temps de retour vont être plus performants qu'ils n'étaient il y a quelques temps, mais pour autant, ça va quand même nécessiter des efforts d'investissement importants et on va être obligé de travailler sur plusieurs fronts. Donc, est-ce que dans les priorités européennes, il peut y avoir un effort financier là-dessus? Et puis, l'autre point important, c'est plus généralement là où il y a un gap important et donc des coûts qui vont être non négligeables, est-ce que des soutiens européens ciblés peuvent être envisagés? Et puis, le dernier point de vigilance qui nous paraît aussi important à souligner, c'est la question, justement, dans une logique d'économie circulaire, du recyclage des boues. Nous, on pratique par exemple 100% de recyclage agricole, alors 70% épandage et 30% compostage. Mais il nous paraît important, justement, pour sécuriser à la fois juridiquement, techniquement et aussi psychologiquement cette politique d'économie circulaire, d'être attentif à ce qu'on soit très exigeant sur non seulement la question du principe pollueur-payeur en matière de micropolluants élargis, comme je l'évoquais tout à l'heure, mais aussi notamment sur les règles d'usage et de commercialisation des substances à enjeu, puisque les substances à enjeu, elles ont nécessairement un impact aussi sur la qualité de l'eau qui va être traitée et donc des boues qui vont être produites. Et donc, c'est important pour nous d'assurer cette cohérence et également qu'on puisse s'assurer de facilités qu'on a parfois difficilement à obtenir sur la question de la méthanisation et notamment de l'accessibilité de nous en tant que traiteurs d'eau aux gisements qui nous permettent notamment de faire de la méthanisation, puisque ça rentre en concurrence avec d'autres activités. Voilà ce que je voulais vous dire en quelques minutes, puisque c'est le temps qui m'a été imparti, mais je pense qu'on aura l'occasion d'échanger. En tout cas, merci beaucoup pour tout le travail que vous avez fait déjà en amont et tout le travail d'écoute aussi que vous menez aujourd'hui et dans les semaines, dans les mois qui viennent, et à Armando aussi pour le remarquable pilotage du travail de groupe.
Thank you very much. And now we give the floor to our colleague Renata Tomusiak, who is the president of MPEVIC, which is the operator of Warsaw that manages the water service in the Polish capital and some neighbor municipalities. She couldn't attend this meeting due to the known facts, but we give her the floor for her to know her point of view. Thank you. Thank you, Renata.
Hello. Good morning again. Good afternoon, sorry. And I'm listening to very careful, and I won't repeat the main points of the new directive because my predecessors did it. So maybe I focus on the main issues which we have in this new directive draft. So generally, we have increasing availability of sanitation services and guaranteeing its adequate levels in agglomerations, reducing the environmental impact of the industry as a whole, and harmonizing the requirements relating to storm overflows, and many more, promoting the development of the use of renewable energy sources and the closed-loop economy. Next, increase the use of wastewater testing as a public health monitoring tool, increase transparency and access to information, for example, regarding wastewater treatment processes. So each of the above mentioned aspects is important and bring benefits for us as an industry, in my opinion, as well as for the environment. As a representative of the industry, I know that the level of water provision and sewage infrastructure development is high. This is, of course, my opinion too. I will bring the example of Warsaw, I know very well, but I believe it's not different across the whole EU. For 98% of Warsaw's connection to the sewage system is in place or possible. 10% now is not achievable because the city is developing dynamically, and our investments must chase the development of the city. This is true. Certainly, connecting all households across Poland to a common sewer system will be a challenge, as our legislation allows domestic treatment plants for single-family housing. This is our law now. It would be worth verifying how it works in other countries. I believe that some residents are not motivated to connect to the network for the reason. This is important, I think, especially when we talk about climate change, especially in the countryside where connecting might be costly and the network is not always available. Those with their own septic tanks stick to them as they do not seem to have a good reason for the change. In large cities, the situation is the opposite. Almost everyone wants to use the common system. It's cheaper, available, of course, and does not require maintenance from the user side. As for the new requirements for storm overflow, this is really interesting. This is really in Warsaw, I think that not only amazing challenge. So at the proposal for the urban wastewater, it will be crucial to clearly define the conditions. The current document, this is exactly annex number 5, specifies the term load. It specifies that early storm sewage overflows must not have a load greater than 1% of the total load calculated for dry weather conditions. Okay. The above mentioned conditions is reasonable really. However, there is a dangerous provision in the general conditions of the new directive draft. It also connects this requirement to the wastewater volume. Specialists from my company have analyzed this available data and come to the conclusion that the percentage should be elevated to at least 6% for the requirement to be met. If we talk about this proposal, that it not should be load, only volume. Still, this would be an ambitious target. I believe that this first idea about load is really correct, and our next step should be to precise it. And when I listen today, I hear that this is acceptable for all of us. So another challenge will be meeting the obligation to perform dynamic analysis of the rainwater sewage quality. Currently, mathematical models are quantity rather than quality based. We need to invest in state-of-the-art art, measuring infrastructure in order to create better quality reports. And the deadline to implement the requirement mentioned in the document, it's set for 2035. It sounds like enough time in this case, but in this next point, I would like to touch in the stage of water treatment, and this is a little complicated for us now. It's important to define what the third wastewater treatment stage means in terms of its requirements. The maximum levels of nitrogen and phosphorus or nitrogen and phosphorus need to be clearly set up. For now, the requirement seems to be feasible for large agglomerations. It shouldn't generate too many high investment costs. As far the third level of wastewater treatment related to micropollutants removal. This situation gets a bit more complicated. 80% reduction of the indicated substances is not possible at this time, in our opinion, of course. And according to my colleagues, I must admit that I want to quote them because I'm not specialist from this, but my people are. So testing various technologies, excluding membranes, within more than a year of tests, we were able to achieve 70% maximum reduction for diclofenac. We were able to reduce other substances in the range of 12 to 30%, considering that the directive assumes financing the expansion of technologies for the fourth stage of wastewater treatment within the framework of the polluter pays principle, and the fact that details of this mechanism and the financial transfers of its funds are not specified at this moment. The December 2030 deadline for partial implementation of Article 8 of this draft seems difficult to achieve. But I understand that this situation can be different in each of country. So I think that European Commission has better figures. It's interesting really to know more. And next point, I would also like to share a few thoughts on energy neutrality. It seems that for wastewater treatment plants between 10,000 and 20 PE, the condition of energy self-sufficiency may not be even possible with the current state of science and technology. For large facilities above 100,000 PE, it will be possible, but it will likely involve a large amount of investments in the run up to 2040. For example, alternative substrates for methane, digest, and other opportunities to intensify biogas production will be important to achieve the 100% result. And it seems that the provision of Article 11 on wastewater treatment plant energy self-sufficiency will be the biggest challenge. And a lot depends on further documents implemented within the directive. On the top of that, it's also difficult to evaluate the microplastic level monitoring requirements proposal at this point. There are no available measurements method, nor is there any point of reference. So to sum up, new directive proposals make sense, especially in view of climate change and current geopolitical conditions. The aforementioned are the reason why we should support each other and I think work together to meet the goals within the agreed deadlines. This is why I think that this seminar is really very important. And next meetings is really needed for all of us. And this is important that EU member countries understand their obligations and follow regulations. So I would like to emphasize the investment aspect because as a chairman of one of companies which are responsible for these goals or targets, as we all know, without financial resources and the support from EU funds, the conditions of the new directive may be difficult to implement. So clearly we need funds to proceed with the guidelines, even though we are all part of the EU, we still have different laws on. For example, tariffs, yes, approving path and costs eligible for tariff classification. This is really important thing too. So I think that directive should strongly emphasize that water industry investments should have priority, and companies representing this industry should have sufficient funds to carry them out. This is not clear in each of our countries. So it will be my conclusion. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, Renata, for your point of view. And at this stage, we have heard the Commission. We had the suggestion and the perplexities, let us say, of the operators, and the picture wouldn't be closed without one other important actor, which is regulation. And let me extend a warm welcome to Mr. Andrea Guerrini, who is the president of the European Regulator Association, and I asked him to join the panel. We say that the regulation has greatly affected the water industry, and that the wastewater directive will soon trigger some kind of radical change. So, what can regulation? How can regulation affect this change?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Armando Quazzo, and thank you to Aqua Publica Europea for inviting WAREG to this interesting, really interesting seminar. So we did our job. So we started the proposal, and I want to say the appreciation of WAREG to the European Commission for this type of directive that is really challenging and is really posing environmental target to the water sector. And I think this type of directive is going to transform the water sector in a sector that is much more sustainable from the environmental point of view, like the European Commission has already done for the waste sector and for the energy sector. So it's an important reform from this point of view, and it is aligned with in our view, with a Green Deal target and with the Fit for 55 goal. Thank you, Armando. I just want to bring to this seminar audience a quick overview on who we are. We are the Association of Water Regulators. We work with economic rules. So our members, we join we cover Europe and neighbor countries of Europe or of European Union. We join a variety of public entities which deal with tariff and economic affairs concerning water sector. So the majority of our members deal with tariff approval, tariff estimation and calculation. The majority of our members define a methodological framework for tariff approval. And then, as you can see from the chart in the bottom, a large part of our members are monitoring KPIs and someone, in particular 9 out of 30 members, use KPIs for an incentive-based regulation, so for assigning to water utility reward and penalties according to their capability to achieve or not goal. And usually this type of KPIs set by regulators are always aligned with the goals set by European directives. As association, we cover at European Union level more than 300 million customers that are affected by our rules, and including also non-EU countries, we cover more than 400 million of customers. This slide just to say that going to our website, you can find several reports we periodically produce, such as a picture of water regulatory framework and governance at European level, our position on the last directive and regulation, for example, on reuse of water, and the summary of our second conferences on water regulation, and a summary that we published in the full report and a summary published at the end of 2019 on the tariff methodologies adopted at European level. It was a survey made by WAREG. This report summarized all the methodologies adopted by all regulators. Well, coming to the proposal of directive, we really appreciated, as I said, the goal of energy neutrality because, in our view, it really reformed the water sector. It is going to really make the water sector more closer to the energy sector and to the waste collection sector, as I say, and waste treatment sector, because it looked to the water sector as a sector that could provide a circular economy and environmental sustainability. So this is provided also by the goal concerning the monitoring of greenhouse gas emission. I will give my comments further in the next slide. In this step, I just want to give my concern, our concern, referred to the estimation of tariff increase that could be caused by these very challenging goals that the directive is going to set. Because there is an estimation that Mr. Spunar said it's 2.3% of tariff increase. We consider that probably it will be, of course, an average increase at European level, but looking to those countries which are a little bit far from the full achievement of the goal set by the actual directive, probably this type of increase should be revised, should be improved. I refer to the Mediterranean countries, I refer to the East European countries. So as a regulator, we are ready to provide our estimation on the possible impacts that this type of directive could provide on WAREG areas. But we think that probably it would be much more than this figure, because targets are really challenging. Well, looking to the articles that could characterize and condition in the future, once adopted, the work of regulators. Well, first of all, the subject matter, I think, yeah, for this type of article, there is only appreciation from our side, because it extended the goal of the directive not only to environmental protection, but also to human health protection, the reduction of greenhouse gas emission, and transparency to customers. So it's sound goods for regulators. Looking to the details, there are a series of articles concerning the requirements for collection and for treatment. These articles, the 3, the 6, and the 7 and the 8, are really assigning a strictly target, strictly goal to at country level. I think at that level, so linked to that, to this type of target, there is room for work for economic regulators that could contribute to support the achievement of these multiple and strictly target. First of all, working with our mechanism of incentive-based regulation that on top of the typical command and control approach of the European Commission that assign European funds for those who are aligned with the goals set by the directive, but at the same time, after a given span of time, apply infringements. Well, regulators could act with our incentive-based regulation, assigning to water utilities, not to country, but to each single water utilities targets which are aligned with the goal set by with the general goal set by the directive. We can act more frequently than the job made by the European Commission, and so we have demonstrated for example, for the Drinking Water Directive, but also for the actual Urban Wastewater Directive, that we can build a pattern for moving the water sector and the water utility toward the goals set by the directive. So what I'm going to ask with reference to this article, but in general to the EU acquis, to the EU legislation on water, is a recognition of the work made by regulators. Regulators exist in all Europe. They could be municipalities, sometimes they could be independent authorities. In other cases, there are countries that are doing self-regulation. So I think that the water sector is governed with a regulator toolkit. So rules are present, and I think they should be, economic rules are present in the water sector in all countries, and I think they should be recognized in their role of fasting the achievement of EU goals. Well, our appreciation goes also to Article 9 for that introduced the extended producer responsibility. I think the experiences from waste sector will be useful and probably also replicated in the water sector with much more homogeneity, since it will be impossible to ask to the producer of medical care to open a wastewater treatment plan. Probably the solution will be that they make a consortium for paying to water utilities for dealing with micropollutants. However, even in this case, I think there is room for work for regulators. For example, in the waste sector, I am in the board of the Italian authority that cover also the waste sector and also water. In the waste sector, the regulators in Italy cares about the definition of the amount of efficient cost that should be charged to producers. So even in this case, I think that the directive should identify who will define the amount of efficient cost that producers should pay. Then looking to probably, in my view, one of the most interesting article in the directive, the one that really changed the paradigm of the water sector, the energy neutrality. There is only appreciation for that. In line with my previous comments and those in the next for the next articles, I think here there is also here room for job for regulators, since this type of target is set only at national level. So the energy neutrality is a goal that the proposal seems to set only at national level. So in the implementation of the directive, there will be a need to identify a single target for single areas and single utilities. And usually this type of job in WAREC countries is made by regulators that translate national target in target for single utility. Another point that the Article 15 is not a new article. Is an article that promotes water use. Even in this case, I think it's really important, the water use, especially in Mediterranean countries. And what we are going to say to the European Commission, we have already said for the consultation on regulation for wastewater use, is that it is important to define who will pay for the water reclaimed, discharged from wastewater treatment plants. In Italy, we are opening to a solution that include the cost for the additional cost for preparing wastewater for use in the water tariff. So citizens could pay for the water that will be reclaimed by farmers. It will be a solution, is now discussed, for example, in Italy. There will be other solution like a tariff that could be paid by farmers, but I think it would be important that at European level we could find a solution for this type of measure. I'm going to conclude, but of course the slide could remain. So for comments, and of course I can take it again in my second presentation. I think Article 23 could be the one under which could be recognized the rule of regulators. It carries with the implementation of the directive at member states. And I think that this article, if amended, could recognize the role that regulators, as I mentioned before, could play in the implementation of the directive. For example, also in the last article concerning transparency, it's a typical issue of regulation. There is no more time, so I close here, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Guerrini. I do know that many colleagues will have some burning question, but it's not very often to find on the same row the regulator, the operator, and the Commission. But I would like to ask Mr. Sponar to wrap up with this final consideration on all the suggestions that they gathered in this workshop.
Thank you. Well, there was a lot of reaction and remarks. I will not cover everything. I'm sorry. I will try to do my best, but it was important. On European funds, first, obviously they will remain available, and I think that there are a lot of funds which are available for energy neutrality and to go in that direction. As I told you, there was a remark from Warek on the cost. We made this cost assessment before the crisis on energy. If I have to redo it, I can increase the benefit, and increase really the financial benefits coming from energy savings. That's absolutely clear. The experience of 2 or 3 member states having on the path to reach energy neutrality for their countries is showing that it is being met by a different type of measure, a combination of energy efficiency. And that's why we have included the obligation of energy audits in this directive, which are also conform to the energy efficiency directive. Then renewables, clearly, but there is a limit to that. I mean, there is a space limit. There is a, a lot of limits, particularly if you are in a city also, but probably energy efficiency is really promising, then renewables, and then biogas, obviously where it makes sense. Again, if our proposal is pushing for crazy solution, which doesn't make sense, we will consider that, but we think that it's reasonable. It's based on the experience of 2 or 3 member states having fixed this objective for 2025 already, and the other to 2030, and they've given us a clear definition of the cost and how they intend to go there. So I think this best practice is in place in some countries. There the regulator can play a role, but it's not to the European Commission to define the role of the regulators. Obviously, I mean, this is, the magic word is, I don't remember, but we have to find a good balance between what we can do at European level and what needs to be done at local and subsidiarity. That's the magic word I was looking for. On nitrogen, phosphorus, yes, we kept the possibility to have a global reduction target or individual limit value. So this flexibility is still there. On EPR, the producer responsibility schemes, why not others? But we have to start with something, to be honest, pesticide or industrial or phytosanitary, this is a tool that needs to be manipulated with attention. Probably microplastics could have been another candidate. But the problem is that you need a cost which is directly due to some products placed on the market by a sector. Here we have a good case because the quaternary treatment is not needed if you don't have pharmaceuticals or cosmetics on the market. They are really responsible for the pollution, you know. There is a clear cost and we can really attribute to these two sectors. So it's clear, it's really clear, you know. For the others, I have doubts. You need to find always a good balance between the administrative cost of this system. They need to declare what they put on the market. They will have to declare the toxicity of their products. So it's quite heavy in terms of administration. But if all that goes to, you know, I mean, and here we have a financing which will be 1.2 billion per year. It makes sense. I think it makes sense. We are approaching the really good balance here, you know. For other things, I'm not yet sure, but happy to continue the discussion on that. Yeah, for the energy, I said I'm not telling you that this is not challenging. It is challenging, yes, but I think that we are making a directive for the next 20 years and 25 years. So it was important to be clear on the objective and to fix a vision, you know. The worst would be to leave it, you know, open. And I think if we are clear on the objective, even if we can give more time for some measure, but the most important is to give a clear signal and to leave enough time. I know that these investments are taking time, and I think that this time is needed, and we should provide this time. And that's what we have tried to do, but maybe we missed a few things. And again, happy to discuss on that. Well, for the rest, I think that's the most important thing that I wanted to say on rainwater. You know, you can I would say relax a little bit. This indicative target means that it's an indicative target. Yes, exactly. You can breathe. I mean, we were thinking of a compulsory target, but as I was mentioning, it was impossible to define that at European level. So the first thing to do in this integrated plan is to define the own local objective and to compare them with this indicative target of 1%. Maybe in some parts of the European Union, it will be possible or even possible to do better. In other parts, it won't be possible. Okay, we take note, but at least we are starting this reflection. We will monitor what happens there and we will have better information. And again, our objective is to not push for grey investment. On the contrary, we really think that with the new technologies, the IT technology, we can optimize the existing infrastructure by a better management of the quantity and the quality together of the water, by a better management of the reservoir according to the wastewater treatment plant's capacities, and by a better timing of, you know, after a heavy rain, of the management of the quantities of water and their quality. So there, I think there is a lot of things that we can do without major investment. But the first step is to understand the situation. And that's what we are imposing, but not to have the results, you know. You have to put in place the strategy after, and then you decide at local level what is feasible and not and desirable, you know. Also, we cannot go much further at European level, I think, you know. Well, that's relatively all. On the EPR scheme, yes, okay, I take note that I understand your point of view. Okay, you agree with the standards as long as it's paid by the other. Okay. Well, that's perfectly understandable, you know, but I cannot guarantee myself, you know, we are a poor commission and we are making a proposal. No, who is deciding? It is the parliament and the council. So I think you need to speak with the people in charge of negotiating this directive in the council and the parliament, you know. Yeah, well, no, our role is a little bit different. We took a responsibility to make this proposal. We will defend this proposal as much as we can, but with an open mind. And then after we have to find a compromise. Our role now is to try to find a compromise between the council and the parliament, while taking into account, you know, the information provided like today, you know. Thank you. That's all what I would like to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything. And I know that we have eroded all the time that we had left, so we'll have a very, very quick coffee break and then start again.
Thanks. We are only half an hour late, so 10 minutes coffee break. We resume in 10 minutes.
Écoute, quand je vais pousser les gens à l'intérieur, je prends ta date, pour toi tu fais le tweet et moi je répète la télé. Ça va, cool.
If you would better, yes, thank you. Thank you. So, hello again, everyone. We are starting the second session. Oh, I'm online, huh? Sorry. We are starting the second session of this seminar. We are just slightly delayed. Apologies for that, but which means that I will be ruthless for this session in moderating the time. And so I ask really speaker to keep to the schedule. And in any case, when the time is over, I will make myself here with a little bit of noise like this. When you hear this, it means that you have 1 minute to close. So second session focusing on the water energy nexus. We just heard from the European Commission that the proposal for review of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive sets a very ambitious target on energy neutrality. But beyond the Commission proposal, increasing efficiency is, of course, an environmental imperative. But as we have learned hard recently, is also an economic urgency and a geopolitical necessity. In this session, we try to explore how to seize the energy potential in water operation, in particular in wastewater treatment operation. And we will start with 2 presentations from Aqua Publica members on pilot project or innovative project on energy recovery and efficiency. And then based also on these examples, we try to widen the discussion to understand what kind of policies, what kind of regulation or governance conditions are needed indeed to maximize the potential and foster synergies between the water and energy sector. Without further ado, I would like to invite the first speaker of this session to come on stage, Monsieur Olivier Broers, Director for Studies and Investment at Vivaqua, who will present a new innovative pilot project on heat recovery from the sewage network. Mr. Broers, the floor is yours, and I leave you the...
Merci beaucoup. C'est la commande pour... Merci. Donc, en 10 minutes chrono, je vais vous parler de la ryothermie en région de Bruxelles-Capitale, du moins la manière dont on essaye d'implémenter la ryothermie chez nous. Alors, le contexte énergétique général plaide pour économiser un maximum l'énergie et aussi pour atteindre une plus grande autonomie par rapport aux énergies fossiles. Si on analyse les possibilités pour répondre à ce contexte, dans le cadre des grandes villes, les réponses traditionnelles ne suffiront pas. Il y a donc de la place pour toute une série de solutions, des outsiders comme on peut les appeler, comme la géothermie ou la ryothermie pour relever le défi de demain. Alors la ryothermie, c'est quoi? La ryothermie, c'est un dispositif qui va utiliser l'eau d'égout pour chauffer ou refroidir un bâtiment. Alors pour rendre possible la ryothermie, il faut à la fois par l'intermédiaire d'un échangeur pouvoir capter ou dissiper des calories au contact de l'eau d'égout, mais aussi à la fois relier ces échangeurs à une pompe de chaleur réversible qui amènera les fluides caloporteurs à une bonne température des équipements HVAC du bâtiment connecté. Ça, c'est le grand principe. Alors, qui dit échangeur dit évidemment nécessité de regarder de près la température des eaux usées pour voir si elles sont appropriées à cela. Et vous avez devant vous un graphique qui a été mesuré pendant près d'1 an. Ce sont des mesures statistiques, à un endroit déterminé dans le réseau bruxellois. Et vous avez en ordonnée la température d'eau d'égout en abscisse des heures, de 0 à 24 heures, et ça pendant 365 jours. Donc vous avez une véritable étude statistique. Dans les frontières bleutées du graphique, vous avez 50% des valeurs de température. Dans les extensions en pointillés, 75%. Et ce qu'il est important de constater, c'est que finalement, les extrémums de température de l'eau usée, eh bien, elles sont favorables à l'utilisation de pompes à chaleur, puisque au plus fort de l'hiver, quand il gèle à moins 20 degrés, on a encore de l'eau d'égout à 5 degrés. Par contre, lorsque nous avons des canicules avec 35 degrés sur plusieurs jours, l'eau d'égout va avoisiner des températures de 18 degrés. Si on prend un peu de recul et que l'on va superposer la température de l'air ambiant avec la température de l'eau d'égout, on constate une relative constance propice à refroidir un bâtiment en été et à réchauffer un bâtiment en hiver. Alors, on a mis la ryothermie à toutes les sauces. Plusieurs essais d'échangeurs ont eu lieu, soit des échangeurs rapportés dans un égout, c'est l'échangeur que vous voyez en bas à gauche, soit des échangeurs qui sont intégrés dans des tuyaux préfabriqués, c'est les échangeurs plans que vous voyez dans les tuyaux préfabriqués juste au-dessus. Et les destinations de ces essais ont été multiples et variées, avec ici l'intégration de canalisations chauffantes sous une aire de parking, c'est la photo de droite. Pourquoi? Tout simplement pour voir si on peut se passer de celle de déverglaçage en hiver. Alors ça peut paraître spécial, mais ça peut quand même aussi être intéressant pour des pistes de décollage aéroport, par exemple, où le sel est prohibé. Mais le point commun entre toutes ces expériences, c'est que les matériaux utilisés pour les échangeurs sont onéreux, sont chers. C'est soit de l'inox, soit de l'aluminium. Et ils ne peuvent pas être utilisés sans avoir la connaissance précise de projets de bâtiments à équiper. Notre objectif, il est différent. Lors des rénovations d'égouts, aux endroits appropriés, utiliser des échangeurs de chaleur pour offrir à terme, sans connaissance de projets prédéfinis, un système de conditionnement d'air aux habitations correctement isolées, dont les concrétisations peuvent temporellement se manifester après la rénovation de l'égout. Évidemment, cela présuppose un coût faible pour la réalisation de ces nouveaux types d'échangeurs pour lesquels nous avons un brevet. Comment atteindre l'objectif? On a déjà passé 3 étapes. Je parlerai de la 4e en fin d'exposé. La première étape, c'était d'abord d'avoir confiance dans les systèmes de pompe à chaleur. Deuxième étape, inventer ces fameux échangeurs de chaleur qui sont peu onéreux. Troisième étape, trouver un projet concret. Alors, ça peut paraître bizarre d'essayer de voir si une pompe à chaleur, ça fonctionne, mais en 2007, quand on a commencé, ce n'est pas évident d'avoir un service après-vente. Et donc ici, c'est un bâtiment que l'on a en exploitation au-dessus de la Seine, où on a plongé un échangeur tout simple, un échangeur qui est constitué d'une boucle en inox pour faire fonctionner des pompes à chaleur. L'étape numéro 1, OK, on a eu les services après-vente que l'on souhaitait, donc 2007, première étape passée. Deuxième étape, là, on est au cœur du concept. Lors des rénovations d'égouts, donner une place centrale aux échangeurs pour la restructuration des ouvrages, en intégrant ces échangeurs dans les travaux. Ça veut donc dire que les coûts de placement se retrouvent dans les coûts de la réhabilitation des réseaux et non pas comme une charge supplémentaire au projet d'HVAC qui viendra un jour. En fait, le concept, c'est que l'échangeur que l'on a inventé va servir de coffrage perdu dans la réhabilitation des réseaux d'égouts. Alors, on a fait un proof of concept en 2014 pour essayer d'étudier cet échangeur. L'échangeur, vous le devinez, il est là en noir dans l'égout. Il fait 6 mètres de long. On l'a mis un petit peu à toutes les sauces. On l'a testé. On a regardé le design des fixations pour éviter qu'il ne s'enlève quand il y a un orage. On a essayé aussi de voir le taux d'encrassement de ces échangeurs parce qu'on ne doit évidemment pas gêner l'exploitation du réseau d'égout. Et puis, ça nous a également permis d'affiner nos méthodes de calcul pour voir ce que l'on pouvait finalement ressortir comme kilowatt de ces échangeurs en polyéthylène haute densité. Donc, dans le cas ici, c'est un échangeur de 6 mètres de long et on a caractérisé la puissance de l'échangeur que l'on pouvait avoir et on voit que cette puissance, en ordonnée, on a entre 2,5 et 5,5 kW et c'est fonction de 2 paramètres. Le paramètre qui influence le moins, c'est la température, parce que finalement, entre 5 et 18 degrés, les pompes à chaleur ont des rendements optimaux. Par contre, un paramètre qui influence fortement, qui va du simple au double en termes de puissance de l'échangeur, c'est le débit qu'il y a dans l'égout. C'est pour ça que je dis qu'il faudra mettre ces échangeurs dans les réhabilitations aux endroits appropriés. Et maintenant, on est à l'étape numéro 3. C'est qu'on a un vrai bâtiment, un bâtiment de 15 000 m². Ce bâtiment, c'est le nouveau siège administratif de la commune d'Uccle. Ils nous ont fait confiance et donc on leur a demandé de nous donner le profil de consommation énergétique en chaud, en froid du bâtiment. En rouge, vous voyez les besoins en chaud, jusqu'à des points de 400 kW en puissance en chauffage. Et en froid, c'est les histogrammes bleus également, des besoins de 400 kW en frigorie. Et on s'est mis d'accord pour leur fournir le quart de ces besoins. Et avec nos calculs, on est arrivé à un résultat de 100 mètres d'échangeurs que l'on a placés pour essayer d'obtenir le résultat escompté. Alors, quand même, pour vous montrer le principe, c'est bien une réhabilitation de réseau. Donc, les échangeurs, leur conception, leur placement est rentré dans la caisse de la réhabilitation du réseau. Vous voyez l'égout à gauche en maçonnerie complètement disloqué, l'égout après le placement des échangeurs complètement refait et en même temps on va donner l'énergie nécessaire au bâtiment qui est connecté dessus. Ici, c'est un grand résumé d'une année de fonctionnement du bâtiment qui n'était pas encore complètement occupé, mais qui livrait déjà ses premiers résultats. Après un an de fonctionnement, il n'était pas encore occupé. Pourquoi ? parce que la rénovation du bâtiment a pris beaucoup plus de temps que prévu. Nous, on était prêts avec les échangeurs, on était prêts en temps et en heure, donc c'était installé, on a mesuré, et on s'est rendu compte en un an qu'on obtenait près d'un rendement de 500%. Ça veut dire que un watt électrique de la pompe à chaleur vous donne 5 watts de chauffage ou de frigorie, ce qui est le résultat que l'on escomptait, un petit peu au-dessus du résultat que l'on escomptait. Alors, quels sont les enjeux? Bon, ici, on a mis 100 mètres d'échangeurs. On a eu un deuxième client entre-temps. On a de nouveau 100 mètres d'échangeurs qui ont été placés au centre de Bruxelles pour la commune de Bruxelles-Ville. Là, on ne va faire que de la frigorie. Mais là, on n'a pas encore du recul par rapport aux chiffres. Mais l'enjeu, c'est que si on arrive à mettre 20 km d'échangeurs au sein de la région de Bruxelles-Capitale, on peut, par calcul, déterminer qu'on aura un gain de 26 000 tonnes de CO2 par an. Alors, ça veut dire quoi, 26 000 tonnes de CO2 par an pour une région comme ici? Ben, on a un incinérateur. L'incinérateur de la région, c'est une responsabilité de 62 000 tonnes de CO2 par an. Donc, on voit quand même que ce n'est pas trop mal en termes d'ordre de grandeur. Et si maintenant on s'attaque de près à la responsabilité du chauffage des bâtiments de la ville de Bruxelles, là on est à 170 000 tonnes de CO2. Ici on est avec 26 000 tonnes si jamais on pouvait mettre ces 20 km d'échangeurs. Donc la quatrième étape, et je terminerai par cela, la quatrième étape pour atteindre l'objectif de déployer ces échangeurs de manière industrielle dans les réseaux, c'est d'avoir encore plus de recul qu'un an de recul que l'on a pour le moment avec le bâtiment Duc. Donc, c'était un appel aux projets, aux personnes qui sont ici. Donc, si jamais vous avez des projets, n'hésitez pas à prendre contact avec nous. Donc, d'une part, avoir plus de projets, avoir plus de recul et aussi mettre au point un business model win-win éprouvé. Et après, on pourra partir vraiment en production industrielle. Merci pour vos renseignements.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bruce. Thank you for this very inspiring and promising project, and congratulations also to think to it maybe before many others. But I know that there are other members of Aqua Publica that are working on that, and so there will be certain opportunity to exchange on this in the future. I like now to invite the second case study, let's say, and would like to invite Gudrun Winkler, Senior Advisor for Management System and Technology at Hamburg Wasser, that will a bit outline the very ambitious and successful strategy for energy efficiency on Hamburg Wasser. Thank you, Gudrun.
Yeah, welcome everybody. I'm going to talk today about Hamburg Water's contribution to carbon neutrality, and here you can see our wastewater treatment plant, where we installed a few years ago a wind turbine. And on top, I have to say, there's my colleague Luda, who told me to tell you that he's standing there because he supplied some numbers today. Okay, just a quick overview. Hamburg Water has a length of 11,400 kilometers water and drinking water. We're doing both water and wastewater supply. We serve 2.2 million people. We have around 800,000 customers, while we not only are working within Hamburg, but also in the metropolitan area. We are treating 450,000 cubic meter sewage per day, and we produce around about 330,000 cubic meter drinking water per day. That's our carbon footprint back in 1990. We had an annual output of about 108,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents, only for energy consumption, electricity, heat, and fuels on the wastewater treatment plant. And our energy self-sufficient was only by 7.6% back then. And since 1990, we have continuously reduced our carbon footprint by optimizing our processes, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today. And since then, our CO emissions have fallen continuously, and our energy self-sufficient rate has increased. And in order to increase sustainability, we have taken comprehensive measures over the past 30 years. And switching from 1999 to 2021, you can see how much it changed. We now have an output of energy self-sufficiency of 70.7 77.3%, which is almost 10 times higher than we had 30 years ago. And we reduced our carbon emission on electricity heated fuels at the wastewater treatment plant down to 4,000 tons. And if we, because I'm going to tell a little bit what we also do, this minus 15,000 tons is what we sell on biomethane gas. And we could actually also communicate this number, but that would be a little bit like greenwashing. So we don't do it. We always put them both aside because we like clear numbers. Okay, and our goal is to reach balance sheet energy self-sufficiency in 2030. And actually, by the moment, we are quite encouraged that we can achieve this goal. So what happened to get there? Milo asked me to tell a little bit the way we got there. And first in 1996, we built an incineration plant, which then closed the heat cycle within the wastewater treatment plant, and which helped actually to have free heat for other processes. And in 2006 and 2008, we had a thorough analysis for determination any measurements which can be on an energy saving side or energy production side. And why back then? Because in 2006, the barrel went out of the price for the barrel. So energy prices was there back there already again. And how did we get there? But actually, after this process in 2006 and 2008, all these measurements which were put down on a plan, they were step by step actually got into place. And we set up three wind turbines. We are having solar power, installed solar power. We do biogas upgrade to biomethane. We have a coverage of a sludge storage tank, which I'm going to show if it's the newest version of the slides. And we also purchase only green electricity now and have many energy saving projects. The largest energy saving measurement was to install pressure ventilation in the entire sewage treatment plant. And this coverage of, there it is, the coverage of this sludge storage tank prevents methane emission of about 10,000 tons carbon equivalent a year. In 2006, in this analyzed strategy plan, it was also set the goal to reach by 2025, 85% self-generation rate. And we are quite confident that we're going to reach it because we're going to build another wind turbine. We're going to expand our digestion and the production of biomethane. And we're also going to install a little bit of numbers to increase energy efficiency in the plant. And our goal now is by 2030 to reach a balance sheet of energy self-sufficiency for the wastewater treatment plant. And we are actually quite confident we're going to get there. This cover of digested sludge storage, it's a big, massive PVC coated collecting 1,800 cubic meters per day digestive gas. And actually on a storage tank where we thought it's not going to produce any more methane gas because it's the sludge which is coming out from the digester. But then within one of these measurements, we had a little student group which were working around and trying to measure any cycle and find out any storage places or any places where we can still recapture gas. And then actually they found out this is going to work out well. These construction saves an emission, as I said already, about 10,000 tons carbon per year. And it had an investment of 2.3 million euros. And actually, we wouldn't have installed it if we didn't get funding. So we got fundings about 80% of this, because what we also have to make sure is that our projects, which we are doing, are paying off. And here you can see if we go down to the baseline in 2007, where actually this strategy plan started, there's the curve of the blue line shows you the electricity price from the mains, and then the red line shows you the energy cost of the wastewater treatment plant, including all our capital costs. So within this strategy, analyzed strategy, we only get projects in place, or we did measurements which did pay off. And that's why we nowadays, even with the energy crisis, we are quite lucky because our prices were kept quite stable. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how to get there and what are key figures. Well, two key figures which we were doing in this strategy analysis is find subjects and projects where you can save energy consumption, and find projects where you can actually produce energy, and then put them in measurements for energy saving projects and energy producing projects. Key factors to success, what we found is that you need a devoted group of people, a devoted group of employees, which are just down to that subject, who are committed to the subject and who are keen on succeeding. And they need to be given a free hand. If you just ask someone who do it alongside his daily business, that might not work out, because they really need to get into the subject. Another key factors to success is you have to think things thoroughly through from the very early stage, and then carry out projects and pilot projects, such as our sludge storage tank, to see if it's working out. And what we also do is finding strategic partners on marketing side, especially if the product you're selling is not within your core business. That's quite important. And what we're also getting more is cooperation, become more important. And when we move away from our core business, seek participation from practice partners. And then, of course, what I told already with this sludge tank, such coverage, financial support on invest is also very important, especially if it's some new pilots which haven't been there yet, and you're not sure if it's going to work out. Then financial support just on the invest is very important, because as a public operator for water and wastewater, we have to make sure that any costs we are producing from projects we are putting in place are chargeable costs, and we can't run the risk on putting in high invest, which then in the end don't pay off. That's why it's quite important to have an invest there. Motivation and driving forces. Well, a big motivation is, of course, to reach sustainability and climate change goals first. But most important, the core driving forces are more like the project must pay off. You have to avoid increasing product costs through increasing energy prices. That was what got on this mission quite well. We reached price stability, especially under increasing energy prices, which we're now quite happy to have. And our future ambition, I'm just going to say a little bit. We're going to build a 5th wind turbine. We're going to increase our biogas production the next years. And we're setting up a project where we try to reach self-energy sufficiency, not only for wastewater, but also for our drinking water supply, in case of to change and rethink our drinking water emergency supply. And therefore, we're going to look into financial support and energy storage, and but because we want to be able to be Blackstart capable of our drinking water network, energy network. Still, yeah, no, okay, can I? And what's also just what's important to support these kind of projects. We need what we figured out. It's quite difficult now because we got quite far with all these projects we put in place, and we still have ideas for further projects. But if we then say we finished already project with pay off, and we take this price, where you can say 30 euros per ton of saved carbon, you can't finance any project on that. And we are actually saying it would be beneficial for us if there's an economic analysis of environmental damage cost for any carbon emission saved. What do you put in place? 30 euros is far too little. You can't do nothing with it. And we would say at least you need at least 200, where you're allowed to invest somewhere 200 euros per ton carbon emission saved to put in projects, and 30 euros per ton is just very too little.
Thank you, Gudrun.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Gudrun. Thanks a lot to you again and to Olivier for your presentation that show in very clear way the link between environmental benefits and also economic benefits, but also make a case for the need of support and integration of synergy with other actors. And this is what we'll discuss in the last part of our seminar with our final panel. And I'd like to invite the speakers to join me on stage. I'd like to invite John Rattian, Deputy Director for Water Policy, Energy and Climate Change Operation at the Scottish Government. I would like to invite Gert de Blok, Secretary General of the European Federation of Local Energy Companies, and finally Andrea Guerini, that I will not present again because I already stopped in the first session. Switch. I let you pass through, but the space is limited. Huh? So the idea indeed of this panel is to discuss together with our experts about the condition to promote more this kind of project that have been seen or to scale them up. I make a little change on the order, and I will address my first question to Gert, who has to leave us at 6. Also, our interpreters have to leave us at 6, so I really invite you to keep your answer short. And my question to Gert is this one. We have seen this project as very promising, very inspiring, but depends indeed, they depend, their visibility, they depend on integration with other stakeholders, in particular also with the energy actors. They also need economic incentives because public water operators then do not take risk, as Gudrun has said. From your point of view, for the energy sector point of view, can you tell us more about how you see the chance for these synergies considering the European legislative framework? Because we know we try to keep up with the water legislation, but we don't, it's already a bit difficult, as we've seen today, but the energy legislation may be less known to our members.
Thank you, Mara. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Very much interested by the connection between water and energy. There's also a lot of the local energy companies that are member of SEDEC, mostly are owned by the same local authorities that are the shareholders of local water companies. So SEDEC represents about 2,000 companies, 100 million customers in energy and broadband, and we represent them here in Brussels with European institutions. Companies are active in electricity, gas, and district heating. So this nicely connects with the energy water nexus, where you see production from wastewater, where there's heat reuse. There are projects, biomethane from sludge, hydrogen from methane emitted by wastewater treatment processes, and direct electricity generation. We favor in all the initiatives we take and the positions we take towards legislative initiatives at EU level, an integrated energy approach, and generally an integrated approach of electricity, gas, district heating, trying to link diverse energy sectors, but also make a link between energy and water, between energy and local public transport, making optimal use of local natural resources and all byproducts. The energy transition is a very, very complex exercise. We will need, and a very difficult puzzle, we will need all the pieces of the puzzle to realize it cost efficiently. And by doing cost efficiently, make it affordable for EU citizens. Now, On the link between, there have been examples on the industrial link, so to say, between energy and water. Your question is then more on the legislative side. Well, there's a lot of legislation that might enable, if it's well made, might enable this link between water and energy. This is not necessarily the case, and what I see, there's often some lack of coherence between legislative proposals in the energy sector, in the water sector, because they are being developed in different directorate generals in the European Commission. They're treated in different committees in the European Parliament, and the member states, I think their expertise might come closest together from both public services. Just a few examples of legislation that is currently on the table and that may impact the water business. Energy Efficiency Directive is a very important one, imposing higher obligations on energy savings for public entities. This means all companies also that are subject to public procurement. I guess most water companies are subject to it. They will see imposed higher obligations than the rest of society and then other companies. Also, when member states do not reach their targets, the public entities will be asked to close the gap by seeing themselves imposed higher percentages on energy saving. Literally says adjusting the obligation for the public sector to close the gap. So we have been pleading for an exemption for local companies that have public shareholders and that provide a public service, because also they do not have the activity always under control that they have to develop. So whatever the evolution of their activity would be, and the public service they have to deliver, they would have to save the energy point, which is not evident. Same issue on buildings owned by public bodies, so including water companies, where we are pleading to have these obligations to renovate at least 3% per year, or to bring them to near zero energy buildings level, to do this only if it's technically and economically feasible, and with some other proposals. So far, these proposals have been integrated successfully. Also in public procurement, there are very severe proposals of evidently we are behind the target to reach, but we sometimes have our doubts if the proposals that are being made are operationally possible. Renewables Directive, a very important one. I heard about biomethane projects, about hydrogen. The question is if, for example, hydrogen coming out of some of the projects will be recognized as renewable or not, which will most probably not be the case due to a delegated act that has been decided by the Commission on additionality, that you can only call it renewable if it's not connected to the electricity grid, if it's a new installation, and if it's you have an electrolyzer that has exactly the same place and same time producing the hydrogen. So this may be a problem for hydrogen generation in the water sector. Targets for biomethane would help. They're not there yet. So this would help to make projects connecting water with energy and biomethane. Then I would say all renewables are equal, but some are more equal than others. This is also valid here. Waste heat, synthetic gases, energy from waste and wastewater, which is mostly in your projects, are not treated in the same way as photovoltaics and wind. Just refer to the definition of efficient district heating and cooling, where these elements in the initial proposal could not be taken into account for an efficient district heating and cooling installation, which you would have to reach in 2035. Just have to be brief. But a last one example is on the gas package, where for the moment where the proposal from the Commission tries to exclude the use and the development of hydrogen at local level. This is we find it a bizarre choice. It makes me think of the development of renewable electricity, where at the start, the goal and the idea from European institutions was also only to think about transmission level, very big wind parks. We see today that 90% of renewables are connected at the distribution level locally. It might go in the same direction with hydrogen. The current sources of hydrogen are at local level, not yet in big projects at a high voltage level. There is discussion about decommissioning of gas distribution grids, replacing all gas heating with heat pumps, with electrical heating. This is technically impossible. You cannot produce everything locally. This is not efficient for the large majority of the housing stock. This is totally unaffordable for the large majority of the European population. So there's a lot of discussion that will still have to take place on this gas package. So if gas grids are supposed to disappear, they cannot integrate any hydrogen. Evidently, this will have an effect on every project that now foresees the production of biomethane or hydrogen in local projects. So I will keep it to these elements. Yeah, we see a common goal between what water companies are doing, local energy companies are doing. We try to make the most of local resources. We try to reach sustainable local ecosystems, and we try to reach it in a cost-efficient way, and by doing so, also a way that is affordable for citizens also in the long term. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thanks really to you, Gert. Very, very precious contribution. Thank you for sharing so much information about an complete example how the review of the European legislation on energy will affect the water sector as well. How this is important also in the light of what Gudrun was saying in terms of giving them the economic incentives for water operator to make the investments. Just to note that our little initiative, we also try to point out to colleagues from institution, European Commission, DG Energy, about, for example, the Energy Efficiency Directive, about public buildings. We made a plea not to duplicate the provision that we will have from new directive on water, on energy efficiency, with this directive from energy, to create the overlaps and confusion. I don't know if you have been heard. Thanks again, Gert, for this. We'll certainly try to work more in the future together. We will need to work more together in the future. Thanks for that. Thanks for your contribution. Now I'd like to address myself to John from the Scottish Government. I already introduced him. I mean, he has responsibility in the Scottish Government for water policy, but also for climate change and energy operation. We know that the Scottish Government, Scottish Water, Scottish Government have recently published an update of your already ambitious strategy on energy efficiency for the water sector. I would like that, well, if you can tell us a bit more about the strategy, but also after that telling us, based also on the project that we heard from our members, from your point of view, not so of a public administration, not at European level now, but that has to implement the legislation, what are the conditions to create this synergy? Thank you. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, Milo. I have a problem. I have the wrong glasses, so I can either see you or my notes. So I'm gonna choose to see you and do this without notes. So yeah, a little bit of context, I guess. So Scotland not in the European Union, but the Scottish Parliament has decided, the Scottish Government has decided that we will stay in alignment with directives coming from Europe insofar as our competence allows us to do so. Okay, so I'm just as interested in the Urban Wastewater Directive changes as you are, because my government has chosen to stay in alignment insofar as we can. So that's important context. So Scotland, just a little bit of scale, 100,000 kilometers of pipes. Okay, so quite large. Oh, I have slides, apparently. How exciting. I didn't know I had slides. So yeah. So yeah, it's got 100,000 kilometers of pipes. A country that is twice the size of Belgium with half the population broadly. So just to give you a bit of a sense of the scale, 1,800 treatment works. So lots of infrastructure. We've been tracking our emissions for 15 years. So we've been engaged in this journey for a long time. We think we're about halfway through our journey, roughly. Okay, and the journey takes us to we don't really energy neutrality, carbon net zero are not really, they are milestones as opposed to an endpoint as far as we're concerned. So we have a costed route map that takes us beyond those points. I think one of the things that's interesting about the way we approach it is not necessarily to think ourselves as just the water industry. So we take a slightly different view. We're just a public body amongst many other public bodies. So whether or not the renewables are generated specifically and directly for use in the water industry, or whether they are hosted on our land to generate power for the grid, is not something we take the best choice in that place. So there is always a risk with particular legislation that drives one industry to do something, that it forgets that it can be facilitating lots of other activity as well. But we think actually in this case there's room to do both. So we're reasonably comfortable with it, but I think it is a point worth making that sometimes it is better to be, if you own a catchment, a large catchment, maybe it's better to host wind farms to go into the grid than it is to try and use that directly in your own infrastructure. So that just make that wider point. If you want to get to net zero, if you want to get beyond energy neutrality, you need to do the whole business. Okay, so we've had some fantastic examples. Heat from sewers, absolutely. Hydrogen, yes, you'll need to do it for certain things. We're going to do it for our heavy vehicles, for example, because it fits for that part of the ambition. But you need to do energy efficiency. That will take you a certain distance, and we've spent huge amounts of time becoming more efficient in every piece of electrical equipment we have, using digital approaches to drive that energy efficiency journey. That gets you so far, but you're still doing stuff, so it can't get you the whole way. You need to tackle your emissions. Absolutely. Great example of methane capture there. We're doing lots of that as well. Moving on to nitrous oxide, much harder, but starting to investigate the possibilities around there. But you'll also need to offset as well. You'll probably need to do a certain amount of carbon capture in one form or another. So we're starting, in a sense, with the easy bit. We've got space, so we're planting trees. And if I had my glasses, I'd better tell you how many. Maybe I will, maybe I'll look. 3,000 hectares of new woodland is the next project. So 3,000 hectares, a decent amount of woodland. That'll be a 10-year project of natural regeneration. And I guess this is part of the message as well, is to think about the opportunities that go beyond just these compliances with these directives. In complying, you can actually change the landscape for the better. In complying, you can look at the urban cityscapes and shift them towards green-blue cities and away from grey cities in meeting these objectives. So I always think of these directives as, yes, they set some boundaries, but in a sense, they're minimum standards. They're the kind of functional bits you must comply with. But how you comply with it is really the spirit of it is really, really important. So in setting out Scotland's way of doing this, we have looked at it and said, how can we maximize the energy we get from our estate? So we're putting photovoltaic cells over everything. We're extracting the heat from the sewers. We're driving the energy efficiency. We'll produce hydrogen, biogas, anything you fancy. If it's the thing we can do, we'll do it, and we'll maximize it. So we're not really looking at a target. We're saying, what's the maximum we can drive out of this? And similarly on biodiversity, what's the maximum benefit we can bring to the natural environment? Now, there's always cost benefit to come into it. So you don't just drive it to the nth degree madly. You do it with a cost benefit in mind, but you take it as far as you can, push the envelope as much as you can to deliver. So I'm not going to go into vast detail about all the components, but you know, everyone will know process emissions, hugely important. Pumping, efficiency of your equipment, really important. Shifting away from pouring more concrete, really important. Using low carbon building techniques, thinking about every new project you have from a low carbon perspective as you start. Do it in the low carbon way. You won't be wrong. If the maths is marginal now, it won't be marginal soon. So you will not be wrong. So push that envelope a bit, include some of those externalities that perhaps we've been a bit wary about including. Social benefit, environmental benefit, put them into the price, factored in. You won't get an exact price, put them into the imagination of the people doing the design and try and operate in that way that captures the social benefit environmental benefit, drives down energy use, and you will get a better water industry, and think of it just as part of wider society. Because actually, I think one of the great things about APE and its members, it's public authorities delivering fantastic services, leading the way, and actually we can drag the private operators with us because they will feel the need to deliver to the same standards. So actually we can be exemplars in this space because partly we have great directives to stand on, actually give us a sort of momentum, but we can go beyond them and deliver them in a really, really positive way. Thank you.
Thanks to you, John, for this, I would say, inspiring talk. Yeah, please go ahead. Thanks, John. Thanks for this inspiring talk. Of course, the idea is very fascinating. The need that your plea for a need for a whole vision, a comprehensive vision, holistic vision that can bring all the things together, also to get the maximum of both social and environmental benefits. This should be something that lead each of us. In this framework, now I address to President Guerini, Andrea, the last question, but then we need to make the calculation. We need to go back to figures and trying to understand what are the benefits, what kind of incentive can push towards this increase in efficiency and this scaling up of project, of the integrated project. What can do regulation on this? How can regulation help this kind of project that we see in a pilot phase in Brussels on inter-recovery, or we saw in some cases more advanced in Wasser, but as we see also in Hamburg, this is also based on integration, on incentives that were coming either from public authority or for other sector, where regulation can enter in this and help to scale up and speed up our energy efficiency objective.
Thank you, Milo. And I think that we can examine the experience of regulation on facilitating the compliance with the actual Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive to know what regulators can do in order to facilitate and to boost energy neutrality, because it's an interesting story, the one on the job that regulator has played and are continuing to play for the compliance with the actual parameters, the actual standards set by the Wastewater Treatment Directive, and it demonstrated that our tools really works in assuring a fast compliance with the EU goals. I'm going to start with this slide that is an elaboration of WAREG on the data published by the European Environmental Agency for the World Toilet Day concerning the compliance of EU countries with the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, with for what concern the parameter of collection and of treatment of wastewater. Well, it seems not a very effective advertising for the work of regulators, since it demonstrates that no WAREG EU countries, so like Germany, Austria, that operates without regulators, are the best in class. So it demonstrates that, there are some countries that can do a job without the support of regulators, but with a self-regulator approach and so on. The average at European level is 76% in terms of volume of wastewater treated in compliance with the standards set by EU. The WAREG world has an average of 62% of compliance. It seems not a good advertising. However, if you go in the bottom of this chart, you can see that in the period from 2014 to 2018, the WAREG EU countries, so those which are moving from far from the first wave from the goal set by EU, achieve the largest increase for what concern the parameters of collections, of wastewater collections, for what concern the biological treatment requirements and the removing of phosphorus and nitrogen. And this type of approach was especially due, and this type of result was especially due to at least a couple of countries like Bulgaria and Italy that at regulatory level have adopted a very strong incentive-based approach, a stick and carrot-based approach with reward and penalties assigned to water utilities and wastewater utilities for their capability to achieve or not to achieve the standards set by regulators, which are completely aligned with the targets set by the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. So I think this slide is quite effective because it demonstrates that probably an independent regulator and the regulatory authority is not required in all countries of Europe, but where the regulator is already in force, it is important to make their power much more homogeneous in order to give the same speed to all countries for the achieving with EU goals. Well, this is a story of success, and in the next slide, I just give a couple of examples concerning the Italian experience and how, for example, in Italy, we, thanks to regulators and to the job made by water utilities, we change the trend of the poor trends in some indicators concerning water leakages or concerning wastewater treatment and collection, moving from 2016 to 2019 year. I think this type of methodologies, this is my suggestion, the suggestion of Warwick, this type of methodologies, if applied also for what concerns energy efficiency, so if a regulator will be empowered at European level or at country level to assign stick and carrot, reward and penalties to water utility for achieving or not energy neutrality goal, I think we could move the water sector toward this direction. Looking to the Italian experience for the promotion of energy efficiency, it's only carrot, it's not stick, because we have not the power to sanction utilities which are not pursuing energy efficiency. Well, we moving in 2020 with a new tariff methodology for assigning economic incentive to those water utilities which realize investments for energy efficiency, so that we assure a complete cover of cost for investment for energy efficiency, and at the same time those revenues coming from the white certificate mechanism, that is a cap and trade mechanism that in Italy is applied for those who have matured an energy efficiency savings. Well, the revenues that the water utility can obtain from the sale of the white certificate could be kept as a margin, as a profit for the water utility in the measure of the 75%. So it's the economic measure that on top of the complete cost recovery for the investment in energy efficiency could be kept by water utility. It's an economic incentive. Of course, it's only carrot, there is not stick. The same occurs for biomethane and production of electricity from renewables. Even in this case, the authority has set the same type of incentives. So cost for the realization of biomethane production plant, besides the wastewater treatment plants, are completely covered by tariff, by water tariff. And our tariff methodology also covers the cost for producing energy from renewables for self-consumption, and the revenues, the possible revenues that water utility can obtain from selling biomethane in the public network or electricity could be kept in the measure of the 75% as an incentive for realizing this type of intervention. This measure was in force since 2020. Only few water utilities have started to realize this type of intervention, adopting the incentive that regulation are giving. But I think that with the energy crisis, there is much more attention of this measure, not only for the 75% of incentives, but also for removing from the balance sheet of water utilities the risk of cost variation due to the external purchasing of energy. The time is over.
Thanks, Andrea. We managed to catch up at least 20 minutes of delay. I'm really sorry not to go for a question, but you can have, for those in the room, the privilege of being in person, can ask questions to our speakers during the last and important part of this seminar, where we will try to understand the capacity to recover energy from wine. And so we invite you to stay with us for a drink. Just to say, we conclude by saying that, of course, as Aqua Publica, we'll try to continue. We will work a lot in this on this topic in the future, hopefully also with the colleagues from the energy sector. I think that this session showed clearly one thing, that there are huge potentiality for energy efficiency and energy neutrality in the water sector, that it's a matter of willingness of operator, of technology, but it's also a matter of a strong political objective on this, as John showed, and also a matter of good regulation, good framework of incentive to make the two sectors talk together. Thanks a lot for all to the speakers for their time, for the participants to be here with us, and to the translator for their work. Thanks a lot.